Hi everyone, welcome back to Total War Therapy, and today we're gonna finally analyze every single unit from the Nurgle roster. We're gonna see their stats, how they perform in battle, and at the end we're gonna see if they are worth to recruit just for fun or situational. So don't forget to subscribe and let's begin. Just a few seconds to share with you that I followed your suggestion and I opened a page on Fiverr where, if you ever would like, you can tell me with which faction, campaign or area of the game you want to improve, and I will prepare a Total War Warhammer class just for you. Hi, I'm Alberto, I'm a real person, and here you will find the beginner's guide, the battle unit roster, tier list, ranking, and many shorts, so if you wanna support the channel, please consider to subscribe. The first legendary lord, and the only one that we got at the release of Total War Warhammer 3, is Kugat, the Plague Father. That it's basically a great and clean one, but is sitting on a giant throne carried by Nurglings. That it's one of the strongest, most expensive legendary lord of the game. He has so much health just by default that I mean, you need an army to take it down, and still it got plenty of armor even for the standards of Nurgle. Of course, it's very slow with nothing of charge bonus, because I mean, you can expect why. The melee attack and melee defense are still very great, and a lot of weapon strength. He's also an artillery piece, because he can I mean, throw these poor Nurglings that are actually quite explosive when they land on the enemy formations. So yeah, I mean, this is very powerful. It's also a spellcaster if it's not enough with the lore of Nurgle, and yes, I mean, definitely one of the best choices here, and I just love it. The second legendary lord is Tamurkhan, that you can get with the DLC Thrones of Decay. That is one of the most powerful legendary lord both in the campaign and in the battlefield. All the players that are playing you know, around the area of the Mountains of Morn or the Darklands, they know exactly what's the feeling of bumping into the Tamurkhan army. He got many abilities that are quite destructive, and then in the battlefield he's basically an ogre, so with all the ogre stats, riding a Toad Dragon with you know, with the breath attack, and I mean, all the charge, all the health, so it's really almost impossible to take down. You have to give extreme priority to it, and still, I mean, all the stats are great. There is no weakness, and there is also a special ability that when I mean, if you kill it in close to another character, it will take the health of this character. So very crazy. You have to be very careful when you deal with it, but when you play with it, you can just have fun, and I mean, no one will cause you any trouble. Then we got Epidemius, that it's a free LC legendary lord, so you can use it with the base game, but it was not present in the release of Total War Warhammer 3. That is mostly a support lord. He doesn't get any spell, any lore of magic, so you will rely only on his melee capabilities. That, I mean, it's not actually that bad, and also many abilities that will buff and debuff all the allies and the enemies over the battlefield. I like to play with him. The campaign itself is not that great, but I think it's a nice choice if you want to maybe to, you know, not use that much magic, or, you know, spend money on other units and not only on the legendary lords that, I mean, with the Nurgle, they can be very expensive. And then we got Festus, the Lich Lord, that you can get with the DLC Champions of Chaos. Now, this legendary lord is not available as a campaign for Nurgle, but in the multiplayer battles you can use it as an actual Nurgle legendary lord. That's why I chose to put it into the guide as well. And yeah, it's another support lord, but at the same time he's a spellcaster with the lore of Nurgle. He has some switchable abilities to buff the allies or to debuff the enemies. Some nice animation. Is not that bad in melee. It's definitely reliable, but I mean, just babysit him a little, because otherwise you will have some problem. And yes, I'm sorry that is not a full Nurgle legendary lord, but I have to say that his campaign with the Warriors of Chaos in Immortal Empires is actually great, so I like the situation he's currently in. And the only legendary hero is Skaitsk, that unfortunately is available only for the faction of Tamurkhan. And it's truly sad if you consider that, for example, Khorne got 3 different legendary heroes that you can use in any faction. In any case, this is one of the times where Creative Assembly actually exaggerated with power creep, because this is a too much strong unit, plenty of armor, very fast, and of course you can increase all the stats with over the campaign. Melee attack and melee defense very good, a lot of weapon strength, it got the regeneration, it can boost some particular units and many other abilities that makes this monstrous legendary hero really too much for this game. I always hoped that they could buff it, because both if you're playing with it or against it, you can feel his presence over the battlefield, and it's not nice, especially for one of the legendary heroes of Tamurkhan that are even mainy. So yeah, it doesn't justify why this character is that strong. In any case, very cool. The only generic lord that you will get access to with the base game is the Herald of Nurgle. That is basically the representation of the Plaguebearer character. He got not that much armor, but with some physical resistance, missile resistance. The speed and the charge bonus are very low, like Nurgle commands. The melee attack and melee defense are actually great, and the weapon strength is a lot. So in the melee they are quite resilient, but you have to reach the enemy front line, because they will be a little weak against the missile attacks and so on. They get access to the Lore of Magic of Nurgle and to the Lore of Magic of Death, that are very good options. And then they get access to 2 couple of mounts, the Nurgling Palanquin if you want to be more a support lore for your army, and then the Rotfly if you want a more mobile, that is probably my favorite mount, because you can, since it's a spellcaster, you can just going around and cast the spell where you need, and then you can also just try to hunt down some characters, some units, and so on. So I think it's a great option. When you reach the 15th level, if I remember correctly, you can upgrade the Herald of Nurgle to an Exalted Great Unclean one, again with the 2 options of Lore of Magic, the one of Death and the one of Nurgle. This is the ultimate version of your generic Lord, and it will be extremely powerful because it's very big, tons of health, not that much armor, but it will compensate with the physical resistance, and of course it's not that fast with very little charge bonus, but the melee stats are just awesome. They can destroy everything, and they're also some spellcasters, so the enemy will try to take you down as soon as possible, because you can cause the devastation with your spells, but at the same time they cannot eliminate you that easily, because you're a giant monster that will get some kind of regeneration over time in the campaign. So yeah, very incredible. As a generic hero, you can get the Plague-Ridden, that is basically the hero version of the Herald of Nurgle. So again, you can get access to the mount of the throne or of the Rotfly, and it will get access to the Lore of Magic of Death and the Nurgle. So exactly the same, just the lesser version with some, of course, lesser stats. And then we got the Cultist of Nurgle, that is quite a peculiar unit, because, basically it's a support hero. In melee it doesn't deal any damage, it doesn't have armor piercing damage, then it gets very little armor, but this time without physical resistance, and it doesn't deal armor piercing damage. It got the Sundered armor, so it will reduce the armor of the enemies that it will fight against. That is great, as a support, because then all the other units of your army can actually deal damage to these enemies. And then it got plenty of abilities, the regeneration. He can summon units of Plaguebearers, and over the campaign, when you level him up, he can even summon a unit of a Great Unclean one. And then other support abilities. He can get access to some mounts of one only with the DLC, that is the Chaos Warshrine, and with that probably it reached the peak of its power, because it will be an incredible a unit with a lot of health that you will take a lot to take down if you're his enemy. So yeah, Overall, a very not that strong hero, but that over the campaign he can get incredibly strong. Now let's address the melee infantry, and let's start with the Nurglings, the most iconic unit of Nurgle. They are basically a meat shield. They look many entities, but they're actually just 60, but in groups, we can say. They have 0 armor, even if they compensate with a little of physical resistance, and they have an ability called the Cloud of Flies that increase the melee defense when they are engaged in melee. Overall, they are not a bad unit. They are very cheap, easy to recruit, with the very peculiar mechanics of Nurgle. You can get many of them to fill your armies where you don't know which unit to add, or when you are basically running out of money. And yeah, overall you just use them to absorb the damage of the other enemies, and you have to use other units to deal damage to them. So yeah, as a support and the mid shield, they're great, but of course don't expect to use many of them in the late campaign. The second unit are the Plaguebearers of Nurgle, that are the basic melee infantry of this roster. They don't have a lot of armor, but they get some physical resistance. Again, the Cloud of Flies that increases the melee defense when they are engaged in melee. The melee attack and melee defense are not that great, but they got the magical damage and the poison effect that reduces the stats of the enemy. A lot of weapon strength for a unit of this tier, and the charge bonus and the speed are very low, so basically you have just to slowly reach the enemy front line, and once there they will deal plenty of damage. And with all the health restoring abilities of Nurgle, believe me, they are quite resilient and hard to take down, that even in the then they have a lot of leadership. So yeah, I mean, quite great. And in my demonic armies, of course, I recruit many of them. And then we get the exalted version of the Plaguebearers of Nurgle, that are just better in melee, not even that much, honestly, but they got in addition this range attack with only 3 ammunition, magical and with the poison effect, armor piercing, but only 3, so you will not use them as missile units, even because the range is very limited. But believe me, they can be quite powerful, and as enhanced version of the Nurgle army, they are perfect for the late game. They are not even that expensive, and yeah, at the end they are very hard to take down. They have plenty of leadership, so a good option if you are looking for a front line for your demonic Nurgle army. And then we got the Forsaken of Nurgle, that are the generic Forsaken with the mark of Nurgle, so additional hit points, melee defense, less melee attack, and then the poison contact effect. They're a great unit actually. I don't like to recruit them because they're quite generic, and I mean, they're just a green reskin, but at the end they do what they have to do. They have the immunity to psychology, the frenzy, and I mean, as an offensive unit compared to the very slow units of Nurgle, they're a good option. Now let's talk about the beast, and the first one is the Chaos Warhounds with the poison, that are a generic unit of the Chaos roster that it's recruitable also for Nurgle. I'm not sure if you need a DLC, because I think they just have been added as a DLC. In any case, some dogs to put in your vanguard and to to go to address like artillery pieces of missile infantry of the enemy, with the strider and some missile resistance, and then the poison effect, of course. Then we got the Chaos Furies, even here quite generic. We got plenty of them in all the Monogods faction. In this case with the Nurgle we have already other flying options, so I don't know if I would prefer them, but against like artillery and missile infantry, they're actually not that bad. With the poison effect they can reduce the stats of the enemy, so they perform quite well. I mean, this is another, this kind of unit that they're very generic, so I don't recruit them, but I have to admit that they fulfill their role very well, and especially in the early game when you don't have access to the rot flies, knights are not, probably they are the best option to take down artillery and missile infantries. Then we got the Spawn of Nurgle, that is just the Nurgle affiliated version of the Chaos Spawn, not that different in the stats. They still get the Unbreakable attribute. Honestly, it's not a that bad unit. I don't recruit it just because it's boring, but at the end it may have a role if you don't have the Thrones of Decay DLC that adds plenty more of monstrous infantry. I mean, of course, more interesting than this. Then we got the Plague Toads of Nurgle, that are basically giant frogs with not many entities. Now, they're quite slow for a Monstrous Cavalry, Monstrous Cavalry. They get some armor, not that bad. The melee attack and melee defense are not extraordinary, but I mean, with the charge bonus and that little speed, they end up to deal enough damage to be considered in your, amongst your options. They have the anti-infantry and the ammo-piercing damage, so they're very good against heavy infantry. At the beginning, at the release of Nurgle, they were literally one of the fastest options that you could recruit. But now the situation is a little different with the Chaos Knights, with the Rot Knights, and the dogs that have been added with one of the patches. At the end, they are not that necessary anymore. I would just wait to get the Pox Riders of Nurgle, for example. So I'm not sure. And then, as I said, we get the Pox Riders of Nurgle that are not that different. I mean, they have only enhanced stats, more leadership, more melee attack, melee defense, and weapon strength. But at the end, they work in the same way. So you have just to try to, flank the enemy with your not that amazing speed, and try to attack them where they are less vulnerable. Of course, they are an easy target for range attacks from your enemies. But at the end, when they're engaged in melee against some infantry, they perform quite okay. So yeah, you can consider to take them, but believe me, they are not the best options in this game. And then we got the Rot Flies, that are the flying units specific of Nurgle, that are upgraded to the Furies, in my opinion. But at the same time, they don't perform that well against artillery pieces and missile infantry, because they are not many entities. They are just 12. They are better against cavalry, some weak characters, or just to attack the back of some infantry in the end game when there is some enemies routing. But yeah, believe me, they are very weak. They got boosted in one of the recent patches, because before they were just useless. Now they may have some use. They still have the ammo piercing damage, the poison effect, the magical damage, but overall they are not that strong. They go down easily. There are not many entities, so they don't cause severe damage to the enemies. So yeah, consider carefully if it's the best option. And then again, we got the Plague Drones of Nurgle, that are the knight version, so they have all the stats increased, the leadership, the melee attack, the melee defense, and the weapon strength, but it doesn't change at all the way you're gonna use it. So again, you're just to, charge around some enemies not particularly strong. Against other flying cavalry, they are quite great, probably only against them. And even against the cavalry, some little monsters, or if they want, to attack the back of the melee infantry. But as I said, overall, they are an easy target for the range attacks. Against a group of infantry, they may find themselves in danger, so be careful about how to use them. But at the same time, you can have some fun. And then we got the Plague Drones of Nurgle with the Death Heads, that basically it's the same unit with this additional range attack with only 10 ammunition, that if you consider that the range is very short and in the battle it doesn't perform that well, I don't know if it's actually worthy. The difference of price is not that much, at this level of flying cavalry, so maybe you can consider to buy it, but not that different in any case. And then we got the Beast of Nurgle as a first monster unit of this guide. I have to say that this unit is extremely powerful, especially for its price, because it's one of the cheapest single entity monsters in the game, but believe me, it's one of the best. It got the regeneration, so very resilient, the Cloud of Flies, so with the melee defense increased in melee, the Slime Trail, that basically all the enemies within the range of 35 meters will suffer a reduction of speed and melee attack. It's immune to flanking with some physical resistance, magical magical damage, poison effect, armor piercing damage. It's not made to deal damage, but it absorbs the damage of the enemies incredibly. So just put it into the middle of the enemy, of all the enemy formation, and believe me, it will not suffer any damage if you do the things correctly. I mean, then if there is a character or a monster hunter that is chasing you, the situation is a little different. But overall, believe me, it's crazy. I love it. In the end, the animations are great, are very great. The second monster is the Soul Grinder of Nurgle. That is another incredible unit of this roster and one of my favorite in the entire game. Basically, this is a missile monster, good both at melee and with the range attack. Let's start with the melee. They get this big armor with a good speed for their size. I mean, compared to all the Nurgle units, they are quite fast, with a good melee attack, melee defense, magical damage, poison effect, the armor piercing damage, a good charge bonus, I mean, for the Nurgle standard. And then they get this range attack that is an artillery, slimy, I mean, putrid, dirty artillery piece that will throw, like, if I remember correctly, there are 3 ammunition that are quite explosive and very accurate, I mean, compared to many other artilleries in this game, with a very good range of 360, that is more than many artillery pieces. Quite good amount of ammunition because there are 15, and yeah, I think this is one of the most powerful, very versatile, flexible. You can use them in multiple strategies, and yeah, perfect. Every Nurgle army should have one. And then the final monster that reflects Nurgle itself is the Great Unclean One, a giant, a little overweight monster, very very big, that, but happy, I mean, he always smiles, that he got access to some spells of the lore of Nurgle that you can increase with the technology. They have a dedicated part of the technology tree. When they die, they summon a unit of Nurgling. They have physical resistance, the Cloud of Flies again, poison effect, magical damage, weapon strength, a lot of weapon strength. The charge bonus and the speed are quite low, so they are more made to absorb damage, but they are also very great at dealing. Just don't focus on the charge that much. The armor is not that great, and they don't have by default the regeneration, so be careful of missile attack or other monsters, because against them they can be, I mean, they can have some problems, but overall they are quite resilient, very very strong, and honestly funny to see. So funny to watch, tearing apart, I mean, destroying and smashing everything. So I think it's a great unit, but you need a lot of money and many turns to recruit it. Okay, now let's talk about the units coming with the DLC Champions of Chaos, so you can decide whether to buy the DLC or not. Let's start with the Demon Prince of Nurgle, that will not be directly recruitable from your pool, but you have to upgrade till the 15 level the Chaos Sorcerer Lord of Nurgle, or also the melee version that will be available in the next DLC. In any case, this is a very good unit because it's a flying monster with a lot of armor piercing damage, not that much armor, and so be careful of missile attacks overall, with the great melee capabilities, a lot of weapon strength. So yeah, I mean, just crazy. And then you will have a good array of spells from the lore of Nurgle and from the lore of Death. So yeah, overall a great choice to upgrade. And I mean, yeah, you have to upgrade your Chaos Lord to this because it's insane and I like it. In any case, I have to say that in the performance, it doesn't deal that much damage to big groups of infantry, so you should focus more on other monsters, cavalry or characters. Then there is the Chaos Sorcerer Lord of Nurgle that will be available directly from the pool of the generic lords. That this is your first mortar version of the lord. That is great. Okay, it gets plenty of armor, and yes, then it's a little more sturdy in the melee, probably is not that great at dealing damage, but it's resilient at least. You can choose to have the Lore of Death or the Lore of Nurgle for your spells, and they made a very good aesthetics, I have to say, with good effects. And yes, honestly, it's my favorite version of the. I mean, I prefer it to the Herald of Nurgle because yeah, it's more armored. You can get the Rot Beast if you take the second DLC, and all together is a very great generic lord to start your army. As a generic hero, we got the Exalted Hero of Nurgle, that is a little powerhouse, especially if you take the mount of the Rot Knight with the second DLC, because it will be very fast with a lot of armor, even if not provided with the shield, good melee attack, good melee defense, a lot of weapon strength, and yeah, I mean, it's lovely. It's very hard to take down, so I really suggest you to get one of them for each of your army if you can afford it, because yeah, you need you know, this kind of hunter and specialist against other characters, cavalry, monsters, and so on. I love it, and yes, I mean, just I think it's clearly, and then I can say a big man, very armored with an axe greater than it. It's just what I'm looking for in a fantasy game. Now, the Champions of Chaos DLC will not give you many unique units, but in compensation you will get a lot of reskins. So let's start with the Marauders of Nurgle that have the Mark of Nurgle. That means more melee defense, more health, and the poison effect that reduces the stats of the enemy, but also less melee attack. They have the shield, so they can be the best front line if you have to fight against the factions like the High Hells or the Empire, and I mean, even if they are a little generic, they're actually a very good option for your early game melee infantry, probably better than the Plaguebearers in Sound, I'm sorry to say that, but I mean, they are very generic, and I mean, they're just a reskin, so I don't like them that much. And then we got the Marauders of Nurgle with the great weapons. That is the second version that sacrifices a little of melee defense to get more weapon strength, more charge bonus, and ammo piercing damage. That is great in the early game if you have to fight against some dwarves, or I mean some factions with very heavy armored infantry that yeah, they are, you know, you need them to complete the roster, because I mean, if you don't have the next DLC, you will need some units that deal armor piercing damage in the early game, but at the same time, you know, they can be in a very huge number of 120 entities. So again, I think they are quite useful, so you should consider to take a couple of them for your army in the early game of your campaign. The Chaos Warriors of Nurgle are just the upgraded version of the Marauders, so I don't want to spend many words. They have all the stats better, except the speed, of course, because the armor is heavy. And I mean, they're a good front line, and probably for the entire campaign, so till the very late game, they are the best option for your melee infantry, since they have the shield, plenty of armor, and a good melee defense. The same for the version with the great weapons, that in this case I have to say that they are less necessary than the Marauders with the great weapons, because at this stage of the game you will get plenty of units with armor piercing damage, and you may not need them anymore. The Chosen of Nurgle are the even more upgraded version of the Warriors of Chaos of Nurgle that have better and even better stats. In this case, they don't sacrifice the speed, and yes, they're almost indestructible, but they're also very expensive. So think about it if you want really to buy it, because yeah, at this price you can really just get a monster. And then we get the Chosen of Nurgle with the great weapons that, according to many statistics, they are one of the best melee infantry in this game. They are very powerful, but also very expensive. And for the same role, probably there are some monsters that can do the job better. But in any case, they are almost impossible to destroy, and very good at dealing damage. And then we got a unit of Marauders, Horsemen of Nurgle with the throwing axes that are not that bad if you want to, you know, try some more skirmish strategies. And yeah, at the end, even if they have a very little range, they have the armor piercing damage, the poison effect with their little axes. So yeah, you can just give it a try, but not the best unit here. And then the Chaos Knights of Nurgle, that first I would like to say that the model is insane. I mean, I know they are just the generic, the monogod generic version of the Chaos Knights, but yes, I mean, I love the model, so I would recruit them only for this. And in any case, they're very strong, quite fast, with plenty of armor and a shield, and then all the Mark of Nurgle attributes, so more melee defense, the poison damage. I think it's a great unit of cavalry, probably better than the demonic counterparts. And there is also the version with the lances that they get plenty more of a charge bonus, but they reduce a lot of melee defense, so better if you want to psychocharge the enemy. And then of course we got also a unit of Chaos Chariots of Nurgle, that again, they are a generic version of the chariot, but with the Mark of Nurgle attributes, so more melee defense, more health, the poison effect, and yes, in this case they have the anti-infantry bonus, so quite good against, just to charge around a group of infantries. And finally, we got the best single entity of all time. I'm talking about the Chaos War Shrine of Nurgle. That it's a good mount. Okay, I had a conversation with some of the players recently. It's a good mount, okay, but I just don't feel the need to recruit it as a unit. First, because for example in the faction of the Warriors of Chaos you need to use some gift of chaos that, it's useless, and then because the attributes themselves are not particularly strong. You have to consider that more as a tanky unit that will absorb the damage, but it's also a very easy target if you play against the Empire, against the Dwarves, for example. So please just avoid to use it. But take it as a mount, okay, but not as a unit, please. Now let's talk about the units coming with the DLC Thrones of Decay, so you can decide whether to buy the DLC or not. Let's start with the Chaos Lord of Nurgle. That will be the next generic Lord version of the Sorcerer Lord of Nurgle. That, in my opinion, it's always better the Chaos Sorcerer, because it adds more versatility, you can cast spells, and at the end they got the same mounts. So if you want a more tanky character, you can take the Chaos War Shrine, or if you want a hunter with a lot of weapon strength and very fast, you can take the Rot Beast, and they will work in the same way. But of course, the Chaos Lord of Nurgle is a better melee specialist. He will be far more tanky, with the shield to be protected by missile attack, with a lot of melee defense. So if you want just a bait to then cast your other spells, this is a very good option, and honestly I love the aesthetics. As a generic hero, we got the Chaos Sorcerer of Nurgle. That is just the hero version of the Sorcerer Lord, that it really looks like the dude of Star Wars. I don't know if you know what I mean. In any case, it's a good unit, is more armor than the Plague Ridden, but it gets less melee capability, so just depends how you want to use it. I like the mounts because you can get the Rot Beast, that is probably my favorite mount in the Nurgle roster. So overall, a great unit, but a little redundant compared to the Plague Ridden. The Pestigors are a very interesting units, even if in this roster we already got a lot of melee infantry with the great weapons and armor piercing damage. In any case, they are a little different because they are faster, they have more charge, even if less armor compared to the Chaos Warriors of Nurgle with the great weapons. And then they got plenty of Beastmen attributes, like the missile resistance, the Woodsman, so they will perform better in a forest, the Vanguard deployment, the Primal Fury, that will grant them some bonuses, and the best one is the immunity to psychology when the leadership is higher than 50%, so they will be less frightened by monsters. And then a very interesting ability called the Tears of Nurgle, where basically when there is an enemy routing within their range, they will reduce their speed of the 75%. That is great because that unit will be, it will be impossible for that unit to escape, and you can annihilate it. Then as a cavalry unit, we got the Rot Knights. That is the second best Monstrous Cavalry in my opinion. till the last DLC they were the best, but after the arrival of the Pleasure Seekers, for me they are in the second place. In any case, they are a very strong unit of Monstrous Cavalry. They got plenty of armor, but they are still exceptionally fast, with a lot of melee attack and melee defense with the poison damage. The weapon strength is not that high, but they are in a good number, with armor piercing damage, anti-large, so very good against other monsters, cavalry, mounted characters, and so on. They got the Mark of Nurgle, so the same things as always, and then the regeneration, so they will replenish their hit points, and they will get, I mean, some weakness to fire damage that, I mean, I don't care. In any case, they're just wonderful. They are too crazy for this game. Even if they are very, very expensive, probably they're always a good choice to recruit, because they are just unbeatable. As a first monstrous infantry unit, we got the Bile Trolls, that I have to admit that I was a little scared at the beginning, because I thought that they could have been just a reskin of the generic trolls, where they are not. I even think they have their own unique animations, and they are quite different in the battlefield, because they get this effect called the stomach acid that will reduce the speed of the enemies and also their leadership. They will get, of course, the regeneration, and compared to the other trolls, they will get more hit points, more melee defense, but less melee attack. And then this other ability that reduces the melee defense of all the enemies within the range of 6. That, I mean, it's good, you know, it just makes this unit very more defensive, but at the same time it will there will be a better support, because they will reduce the defense also of their enemies, so you can attack them with other units of yours. The second and most elite monstrous infantry for this DLC are the Plaguebearers, that are the crazy version of the Man-Eaters, because they got the Mark of Nurgle, so they will got the poison effect, more health, more defensive stats, the bonus versus infantry, and then they keep many attributes of the Man-Eaters, like the Ogre Charge, the immunity to psychology. So overall, I think they are, I mean, probably they are one of the best version of Ogre units in the game, and I love them. I love the aesthetics, these big weapons that they can use to tear apart bunches of infantry, and they're great in the late game against the very armored infantry of your enemies. So I think they are a perfect and very welcomed unit in this roster. And then we got the version of great weapons of the Plaguebearers, that actually they don't witness any change in the stats. They only get the bonus versus large instead of the bonus versus infantry, so they will be most suitable for hunting down other beast, cavalry, or especially monster. That probably against the monsters they are one of the best units in this game. And now the lovely beast that you were all waiting for, I'm talking about the Toad Dragon, that it's alone a very good reason to buy this DLC. In any case, it's a great lizard with the scaly skin, so with some missile resistance, with the anti-infantry attribute, so you can just send it against a bunch of infantry and they will bring the havoc. But don't worry, even against the characters, other monsters and the cavalry, it's also very great. He got the Strider that I don't get why, for which reason of the lore, and then this unspeakable fullness, that is a magical missile that you can cast at 90 meters of distance, that will cause a lot of damage to the enemy. Okay, it will be a very poison breath, we can say. The charge is not that good and is not that fast, but believe me, it's very versatile. He can move wherever he wants with not that much armor, so in any case be careful of missile attacks, especially if they are armor piercing. But yeah, overall it's a great addition and it's very, very lovely. The Frolickers Bubonic is the Regiment of Renown version of the Nurglings that loses the Cloud of Flies, that is an ability that increases the melee defense when they are engaged in melee, and instead they get some replenishment of the health and the melee damage reflection and more leadership when they are engaged in melee, that overall they make the unit far more resilient and the skin is definitely more colorful. The Worshippers of the Crow are actually a Marauders, a great weapons unit of Norska that is recruitable also for Nurgle. That, I mean, is not that different from a unit of Pestigors for the price and for the use that you're gonna make. In any case, they have some Swarm of Flies that reduces the melee attack of the enemies, and the Rage that grants more physical resistance and melee attack with the time spent engaged in melee, and then they are immune to contact effects. The Demon Spew are the Regiment of Renown version of the Forsaken of Nurgle, that in this case they get only this ability called the Swarm of Flies that reduces the melee attack of all the enemies in a range of 35 meters. Not that different, honestly. The Festering Stooges are the Regiment of Renown version of the Exalted Plaguebearers of Nurgle, that again they loses the Cloud of Flies, but they get the Gloom of Flies that increase not only the melee defense, but it also grants the ability to cause terror, and they get the Festering Gate that basically will replenish their hit points when they are engaged in melee, and it will also resurrect the dead combatants, so very powerful for a unit that it's already very tanky. The Rotting Riders are the Regiment of Renown version of the Rot Knights, that they get the magical attacks and also this ability called the Blessing of the Fly Lord that grants some damage resistance of the 15% till the leadership is higher than broken. So once the leadership will be shattered, at that point they will not have this effect anymore. The Barons of the Bog are the Regiment of Renown version of the Pox Riders of Nurgle, and in this case they get first plenty more of armor, that is always great, and then this couple of abilities, the Miasma of Rot that helps the allied units to recover their vigor only if their hit points are less than 50%, and then the Wasting Sickness that reduces the mass and the weapon damage of all the enemies in a range of 15 meters. Bilius Thunderguff is a unique unit in this roster because the Chaos Giants are not available in the Nurgle army, but you can recruit this Regiment of Renown that is affiliated to Nurgle. That's why he got the Mark of Nurgle that increased the hit points and the melee defense, but reducing the melee attack compared to the other giants. He got the Poison effect, and then this special ability that it deserves a mention, because basically it will fart, but it will fart so strong, so hard that it will cause a little vortex that will cause a little damage to the enemies nearby. For some reason, even armor piercing damage, that I didn't know that that kind of attack could be armor piercing. In any case, a very funny unit to, I don't know, to give more life to your Nurgle experience. Uncle for Uncle, that I guess it's a wordplay, it's a great Unclean One, the Regiment of Renown version, that it will get not only the spells from the lore of Nurgle, but also some spells from other lores of magic, like the Spirit Leech from the lore of Death. That is great because it adds more versatility to this unit. The Angels of Decay are the Regiment of Renown version of the Plague Drones of Nurgle with the Death Heads, that in this case they don't get any special ability, they're just a very upgraded version, especially the missile attack that it increased of almost 50% more. That, I mean, it's great if you want a more, I don't know, range focus flying cavalry. The Noxbringer is the Regiment of Renown version of the Soul Grinder of Nurgle that will get a very different effect, contact effect, both with the melee and the missile attack, that is the Cloud of Erosion, that reduces the armor of the enemy and also it destroys the ammunition. So quite interesting to use, and I think you should give it a try. Thank you for following me and see you very soon.